Beautiful day for a walk and talk. Beautiful day. Maybe the nicest day so far of the season. Gorgeous today here in New York on Long Island. Not a cloud in the sky. Temperature feels like probably about low 70s. It's a great day to be alive and talking to my friends here on Facebook Live. And as I let the audience build up, just once again, for those of you who don't understand the flow between the DML app and the Facebook Live, when I do it here on the cell phone, we have no way of putting this to the app because Facebook doesn't allow you to embed and share this thing in real time. So just keep that in mind. We are going to talk today about the Comey memo. This came out last night. This was after our conversation yesterday. We had a great walk and talk yesterday. I have, you guys always email me or use the submit button on the DennisMichaelLynch.com website, which is the way you should do it, sending me messages. Yesterday I received more messages than I've had on a walk and talk in a long time. So we spoke yesterday about the allegations that were out from the Washington Post regarding what it is or what it is not that President Trump said / revealed in a meeting with Russian officials last week. Now, I'm calling today the Great Pile-On. I am calling it the Great Pile-On Day. We will look back, and today will be the day where it basically is Pile-On Trump Day. And last night is what sort of buttered the bread, if you will, leading up to today's Great Pile-On Day. The New York Times stating that a memo written by former and disgraced FBI Director James Comey, that a memo indicates from Comey's pen, written by himself, that President Trump asked him to stop investigating General Michael Flynn. The New York Times reported this based on a memo they say exists that was read to them by a Comey associate. By a Comey associate who read parts of this memo to the New York Times. There used to be a time and day, and it was a long time ago, when a newspaper or a media outlet would never, and I mean never, risk their reputation based on A, unnamed sources, but B, somebody reading a letter over the phone. If you are going to put out a report, a scathing report, that in its own way can reference the possibility of obstruction of justice, you don't do that like you're putting out a weather report of what tomorrow may or may not be. You just don't do that. There is a responsibility. The media, the press, is supposed to be the fourth estate. It is supposed to operate for you, the American people. It is supposed to keep our elected officials accountable, but it is not supposed to hang our elected officials by means of reporting about a memo that was in part read over the phone by an unnamed source who is a Comey associate. What in heaven's name? That's something that you would imagine seeing at the grocery store when you're on the checkout line. You've got the National Enquirer that says aliens are growing inside somebody's head. You've got, fake boobs, and then you've got something like that. That is where that belongs. Not in the New York Times. And so now, what you're seeing today is this great pile-on. And I'm going to explain some of the great pile-on. And I want to thank you in advance if you are one of the people who has shared the little op-ed I wrote, underscored by the video of George Stephanopoulos this morning on Good Morning America. This memo, which nobody has seen, is being touted as the evidence to begin impeachment proceedings against President Trump. Now, I want to break this down for you in the most simplest of forms, and I apologize for those of you who already understand what this means. But for those of you who don't, here is my as quick as I can explanation. In a meeting between Donald Trump, President Trump, and James Comey that took place back in February, Comey is alleging in this memo that nobody has seen that the president asked him to please stop probing into General Michael Flynn and his connections to Russia. I should say alleged connections, because Flynn's pretty much a nice guy. Can you, maybe you could do something about this? Maybe stop? Okay. Comey, who is known for taking notes every time he's in a meeting, every time he's involved in something that is germane to his job. He takes very copious notes, they say. That he took his own interpretation of this meeting with President Trump and he put it down on a memo. This memo is what they are basing, and when I say they, I mean every single last mainstream media outlet and every single last Democrat, and believe it or not, too many Republicans, that this memo could be the smoking gun. Now, for those of you, and I think my audience is pretty much my age and older, so it's not like I have to go back into a history lesson here, but you may recall Nixon's Watergate. The smoking gun was the tape in which the discussions of trying to go to the FBI and conjuring up something. Why was a smoking gun? You got somebody on tape saying, hey man, we're just trying to do this. Okay. There's no tape here. This is one man's interpretation of a meeting that he had with Donald Trump. Now, keep in mind something, because I don't want to come across as completely biased, and I certainly don't want to come across as being blinded by the light. So I take my hat that says, Make America Great Again, I take it off, and I put on the hat that says, DML, Media You Can Trust. I got to look at this. I try to look at this from the standpoint of what is and what is not. Although Donald Trump, and I'm going to speak to him about him as Donald Trump the person, not President Trump. Donald Trump the person is a smart guy, but he is not the most articulate guy in the room. He comes from a place in New York. He comes from an era where talk is done differently than maybe the rest of the country. If you ever listen to Trump talk, he often repeats himself. Or he will take a sentence from, and I do the same thing. He will take a sentence, and instead of going from A to Z, he will go to A to G, skip the middle, go to the end, and then come back to the middle. Or, maybe I say it a different way, he starts giving you a story, he puts it on pause, gives you another part of a story, and then comes back. In doing that, Sometimes his message is lost. Sometimes his message is misinterpreted. Sometimes he makes it difficult, and you have to actually read between the lines and interpret using common sense of what he is saying. Now, the president, I believe, understands the difference between right and wrong. For him to sit in a room with Comey and blatantly tell a guy who has shown he cannot be trusted, that he just basically is a maverick and goes wild, as basically any which way he wants things to flow, he will do it. He has proven this time and again. The president is going to sit there and say, hey, pal, you know, how about you let this Flynn thing go? Come on, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. That is just downright ridiculous. And if the president did do something like that, again, put in my media you can trust, how stupid. But that's the interpretation of Comey. That's the interpretation of Comey and what Trump had to say to him. If Trump said to him, you know, Michael Flynn is a good guy. At the end of the day, he's a good guy. You know he's a good guy. Come on, he's a good guy. You know? That doesn't imply what it is that Richard Nixon implied. Not at all. And yet here comes the pile-on. This morning on GMA, Good Morning America, and this is what I was saying about thank you for sharing my op-ed. George Stephanopoulos, who couldn't be more anti-Trump than Rosie O'Donnell. I mean, it would be a pretty hard choice if you had to pick who was more anti-Trump. I think you'd have to give it to Stephanopoulos just for the fact that he's more articulate than Rosie O'Donnell. George Stephanopoulos gets in front of the millions of people who watch Good Morning America every day. And he basically tells them that the Comey memo, which he hasn't seen, which has not been released, which we have no idea what kind of context any of it has as a whole, he tells the Good Morning America crowd that this is the smoking gun, that this is the piece of the pie that could literally take down the presidency of President Trump after just 4 months in office. He says that the memo as a whole and the potential testimony from Comey could be enough to end President Trump's presidency. That is a downright lie. That is a downright lie. There is no way that even the most liberal of courts would be able to take one man's memo and one man's interpretation of what took place in a meeting, and even for the second be able to say the president is guilty. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. Now, George Stephanopoulos is not a complete moron. Well, maybe a little. But you know what I mean. This is not a guy who gets confused as to, you know, how to get to the laundromat. Not that he ever goes. But you get what I'm talking about. He's an educated man. But what he does know is that the narrative he puts through that television tube to the mom or the dad who's shuffling around little Johnny's lunch, was trying to get his or her keys before they go off to work. And they get this, and they just take the 2 seconds in, because unfortunately, that's the majority of how it is that people take in information, especially pertaining to politics. People don't have time. Most people don't have time. They don't have the love. They don't have the engagement in this stuff. In fact, one of the things that I have seen over the past 12 months is more people telling me that they are now engaged in politics than they ever were before. They were never interested in it before, but now they are. That's the good news. More people coming over. But even some of those people I have gotten emails from and I've had conversations with where they say, you know, I can't even take this. This is why I wasn't involved. This is why I'm getting out. But they still are not the majority. The majority of people have to worry about paying the bills, getting Johnny off to school, trying to keep their job. You know, the car isn't working. The boiler downstairs in the house is, you know, ready to corrode. They're going through the things called life. They don't have enough time to sit down and digest every last thing. In fact, I would guarantee you that if you went up to the majority of Americans, 10 people from any walk of life, and asked them who James Comey is, they wouldn't know. So here they are listening to the soundbite by George Stephanopoulos, somebody who, for whatever reason, they invite into their home every single day. And George Stephanopoulos is telling them that the Trump presidency, after 4 months, is hinging on a memo that we don't even know exists, let alone seen. The irresponsibility in that alone is earth-shattering. And now tie it to something that I know you have not heard anywhere in the past 12 hours. ABC News and Washington Post. Those two companies there are both on the list for Facebook partners who check what is fake and what is not fake news. You tell me how in heaven's name that's permitted to be. You tell me how it is that after every report that the Washington Post put out last week that became basically false news. I hate using false and fake news. I hate saying it. It was wrong reporting, was incorrect reporting, was biased reporting. There are reports that after they launched that whole story, that the Washington Post stood up and cheered as if they just took down the guy. That's somebody that we're having check for fake news? Do you understand the gravity of this? The gravity of this is beyond anything that we have experienced I can't even remember, since 9/11. Since 9/11. When I say that, what do I mean? The risk that this false and fake and biased reporting is putting this country in, the risk we are in on so many different levels. Number one, there's a national security risk. All of this supermarket aisle BS is being watched by other nations. This isn't something that's contained to a little town hall and maybe Johnny at the local deli or pizza parlor kind of overhearing what happened. This is the world stage. There is no other story around the world that is taking greater precedence than this one. Our enemies, our foes, they're laughing. And they're realizing the fact that our weakness as a nation is basically at its all-time low. And that's not because we have a weak president. It's because our president and our democracy is being held hostage by the guys with the biggest microphones. I told you this yesterday. And there were a few of you who disagreed with me. And I have to say this to you, with all due respect and politeness, you are wrong, and I am right, to believe that the president has a bigger megaphone than the mainstream media. You are wrong. Sally Jones at home getting Johnny ready for school is not reading the president's tweets, is not watching Sean Hannity. She's watching Good Morning America as she's getting the kids ready for school. This is the one soundbite that she takes away. And so now what happens is, in terms of that risk nature that risk factor I'm talking about, is the fact that not only are we vulnerable on a national security level based on this information being put out, fake information, or allegedly fake information, but we are now making Americans question the democracy in which we live in beyond anything they've ever questioned. And I have told you this time and time again. If you continue to beat the same drum over and over and over and over again, perception becomes reality. People will start to believe that the President of the United States is in bed with Russia, that the President of the United States is a crooked con artist who somehow created this multi-billion-dollar world for himself, who somehow created these unbelievably charming children, who somehow unbelievably tricked all these millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of Americans. Won the most highest job in the world ever, but somehow this guy is a lunatic. He's a lunatic fringe. The doubt that pounds into the American's head, the person who is struggling not to struggle, is epic. Is epic. That's why you have an enormous responsibility. I'm serious. You have an enormous responsibility. When I put out that op-ed earlier today with George Stephanopoulos, and I explained the difference between what the smoking gun in Watergate was and the smoking gun that doesn't exist in a memo, you need to stop what you're doing and share that. You need to put that link in an email and blast it out to your friends, because they need to see the other side. They need to hear the reverse to that, because believe it or not, I know this sounds crazy. Most people won't even know what Watergate is. They just know that Nixon was like the one guy who got removed. That's all they'll know. And so now they put the parallel. Nixon, Trump, Trump, Nixon, Nixon, Trump, Trump, Nixon. It just, before you know it, there's going to be a rap song about it. Trump, Trump, Nixon, Nixon, Trump, Trump, Nixon, Nixon. That's the way they're going to go. And it's going to work. It's going to work. You have to fight this. And the reason being, as I've told you a gazillion times, Fox News isn't enough. Dennis Michael Lynch walking, talking isn't enough. Rush Limbaugh isn't enough. I once, twice, 3 times have told you that there was a study. That study was that if you put a commercial, a message, on the television screen, 17% of people will actually believe what it is that they see on the television. If you take that same commercial and have Sally or Joey share it with their friends, the believability goes up to 72%. Give or take a few points, somewhere in the 70s. That research shows that because you're sharing something, people will at least take a look. They may push back on you. They may not admit to you that you helped them think differently. But I am telling you, I know this from the election. I picked up so many people from that election by explaining to them what the other side is with this whole electoral college and Hillary Clinton and all that. I explained it to them in a watered down way that brought people over in big numbers. That's our responsibility. That's your responsibility. This is bad. This is bad. On the surface, if this was Obama, it'd be nothing. Seriously, Obama has done what they are claiming Trump did. He did it. He once did it, and he did it to Israel. And nobody said a thing when he gave away information, if you will. President Obama told the Border Patrol, ICE, and Homeland Security to stand down, to not protect our borders, to just release people. I got an email from a lady yesterday, or a guy yesterday, that said, can you please explain to me why President Obama would let MS-13 into the country and not stop them? This is what he did. And the press said nothing. That, to me, is impeachable. Putting American lives? That's obstruction of life. They don't do anything. So this is how big this is. This is your responsibility. This is not going to get better anytime soon. This is going to get worse. It's going to continue to continue to continue. One unnamed source after the next. And nobody is stopping it at that level. Nobody. Not CNN, not New York Times, not Washington Post. Nobody. Unnamed sources. It's unbelievable. Yesterday, a Navy SEAL, a guy named Carl Higbee. I've met him before. Met him at a Christmas party. He used to be a Newsmax guest. Never had him on my show. I used to use another Navy SEAL when we had somebody come on, but, you know, good guy. He was on CNN last night, questioning the fact that there's unnamed sources in all of these reports. And he said, give me the name. Let's ask this person. Give me the name. It's not an unreasonable request. The host on CNN ripped this guy to shreds. Somebody who has defended this country, a Navy SEAL, didn't even give him as much respect to talk to him like a gentleman in disagreeing with him. Screamed down at him. How dare she? And you know what she said? How dare you question the integrity of CNN reporters? Are you kidding me? Seriously? How do we question the integrity of CNN reporters? Sort of like questioning Don Lemon for why he would be doing shots on national television getting drunk. That's credibility? I'm all for joking. You know me. I'll serious on days like today. Other days, I'll be entertaining and funny and just loving life and rolling around in the snow. But when it comes to being on live television, when it comes to reporting to millions of people, CNN is anything, as we put up the report yesterday, anything but fair. They load up the shows with anti-Trumps, and they put one or two Trumps in there. And unfortunately, they don't put people like myself, who can basically bulldoze down 4 or 5 of those people at a time if they wanted to. They just don't do it. This is a bad time. It's a bad time. And so, President Trump, this is why I'm writing these letters to President Trump. And thank goodness, I know that they're getting through. Whether or not he's taken any of them in, I have no idea. Somebody asked me, how do you know? First of all, every letter that I write to President Trump, and there's been 4 so far, every letter I send off to a person who pretty much is his number one person, and I CC a man named John Rowland, who knows President Trump very well, has interviewed President Trump numerous times over the years when he was the number one anchor here in New York for Fox 5. That's how I was introduced to these people from John Rowland. I CC him on every email. I do that so this way there's another person who knows that these communications are going through. John responded on the first day and said, I trust, and then he said the person's name, who's the other person on the email, that person, by name, is going to get this to the president. I have that. If I ever have to show it, I will. I was responded to yesterday by that person, indicating to me that my messages are indeed getting through. And it was CC'd to John as well. The reason why we're doing these letters, and the reason why you need to share everything, is because we are at a point right now like we were a year ago, 10 months ago, 12 months ago, 11 months ago. It is basically the American people, Trump supporters, supporters of making America great again and what that means, supporters of rule of law, supporters of borders, national defense, you name it. You know all the things. We have nobody fighting. This now comes back into our hands. Rush Limbaugh ain't gonna do it. Sean Hannity ain't gonna do it alone. It's basically us versus the mainstream media. In the same way that the mainstream media tried to take down a Trump candidacy, and we would not allow it to happen, we have to now stand up and make sure that they can't take down the Trump presidency. He needs the wind that you can put beneath his wing. You have a responsibility, and I never do this, ever do I call on you to do something like this. Part of your job, part of your everyday for as long as this crap continues, is you have to participate. You have to share things, and you've got to be careful about what you share. Be limited in your sharing. Don't share things from people who pretend they're credible, people who pretend they know stuff. Don't spread things from websites that don't have a name on it that is recognizable or a person's real name. Don't share that. Can't tell you how many articles I get from you folks that you send them to me, I don't touch them, and then the next day I get back to the same person, sorry Dennis for sending fake news to you. You know, like Tucker Carlson's dead on some crazy website. You gotta do what I offered to the president last night. You gotta slow down. You gotta slow down and stop believing everything that's stuck in front of your face. You have to slow down and stop reacting to everything that comes through your feed. You gotta slow down. You gotta really use your head. For an example, if Tucker Carlson was killed in a car accident, don't you think that would be the headlines on Fox News and New York Times and DennisMichaelLynch.com? Don't you think that every single last person at Fox News would have tweeted out how upset they were that they lost one of their colleagues? Got to do your due diligence. So you don't go sharing every single last thing that you see all over the place from everybody else. You've got to be selective. Don't be the little boy or the little girl who cried wolf. That's why, like this ABC News thing that I told you about today, the explanation I give, you put the video, you make the person question. It's got a point. The best thing that I could suggest to you, well, one of my little tricks that I use. The best thing you can do is you can take an issue and put it into somebody else's life. That's why I always use my analogies, my football analogies, my cooking analogies, my home analogies, because people can relate to what it is that they live versus what it is that they don't understand. So you say to your neighbor, if you and I, Susie, have a conversation today, and I make a note of it, and I hand it to our next door neighbor, and say that you called Betty a bitch, what would be the first thing you'd say? Wait a second, why are you just listening to her? Why didn't you even ask me? I didn't say that. Put it, because everybody has been accused of something that they didn't do. Everybody has been accused of something and not had their own opportunity to explain. You want to be held upside down? You want to be found guilty without having any evidence, any proof, any chance of rebutting? One man's word on a memo is enough for the media to tell you that this presidency is coming to a conclusion? We have Democrats right now standing up on the House floor and calling for the impeachment of our president. I've never seen anything like it. These people don't care about America. The repercussions of doing something like that, the risk that it puts on everything. Even, I talked about the risk that it places with our foes and the risk that it places with the American people, doubting our president, doubting our democracy, doubting our systems. You know what it does to our allies? Puts a lot of question marks. And so it's not Trump who's put at risk. It's the American people who are put at risk. But these morons don't see that. These fools like Charles Schumer that get up there and blast out one thing and then blast out another, nobody ever holds them accountable. Nobody in the mainstream media have I seen a clip go through, and I look 24/7. I have yet to see the clip where George Stephanopoulos or anybody else sits there and pounds on a Democrat saying, you were calling for Comey to be fired. You said he was basically the slime on the bottom of your shoe. And now you're coming at the president? For what? For getting rid of a guy who shouldn't have been in that place to begin with? Where's that question? We have a young man, Seth Rich. I told you all about him yesterday. I told you about how I reported on that and ultimately led, as far as I'm concerned, to me being told the next day, you're censored. We don't talk about that stuff because it's pertaining to Hillary Clinton. By the man who owns Newsmax, who gave over $1 million to Hillary Clinton. Last night, on Sean Hannity, the investigator hired by the family is explaining in full detail how it is that he can't get his hands on the computer. Nobody can find the computer of Seth Rich. That alone tells you that the FBI was misled under Comey. That alone. And that has, and now I'm mixing oranges and apples. That alone. How does the FBI not know where this young man's laptop is? How do the police not know where this young man's laptop is? And how does the FBI not hold the police accountable for not having that huge piece of evidence? Of course they have it. It's gone. It's at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean somewhere. It's buried away so nobody will ever find it. Because that's what that was. It was a hit on Seth Rich. It was a hit. And this ain't some drama show. This is pathetic. This is somebody's son. This is somebody who tried to step up and do the right thing and got murdered, assassinated for it. This is something that you think you'd see in the House of Cards or some Netflix series. I think Netflix is House of Cards. You know what I'm talking about, a James Bond movie. This is real life. But people seem to be numb to it. It was nowhere yesterday. They went over this story that this investigator has come out and said, I spoke to an FBI or whoever, one of the federal investigators who said he personally saw the data. Thousands upon thousands of emails. Seth Rich communicating with WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks, who I told you yesterday, for 11 years has been operating. Never once have they been caught giving out false, fake, anything. Never once. Now, whether you agree or disagree with their tactics of getting information out to the general public is a completely different story. And we could talk about that. We could debate that another time. But the bottom line is they have never, ever been hung upside down for telling a lie or for getting something wrong. Who do you know who has a track record perfect for 11 years? Nobody. Nobody. Twice from the Twitter account of Julian Assange, he has put out stories linking to the death of Seth Rich. What more clues does the mainstream media need? If WikiLeaks were to put out stories or emails that were against Trump, it would be 24/7 on every single last channel. Good Morning America, ABC News, NBC News, Nightly News. It would be wall-to-wall coverage. Seth Rich, nothing. Instead, they come up with this memo to change the narrative. We don't want you to look this way. We want you to look this way. Remember what I said to you earlier in the day about the fact that you could go up to 10 Americans and ask them who Comey is? If you get 1, 2, you're lucky. 3, go up and ask how many people who Seth Rich is. You're going to get 0. Go ask who George Zimmerman is. Oh, 10 out of 10. Because the mainstream media pounded the hell out of that. Because he's a racist. Trayvon Martin, everybody knows who he is. Everybody should know who Seth Rich is. Everybody. But nobody does. Nobody knows what happened to him. Nobody knows that story. A few. Meanwhile, that's the key to most of this stuff. Dishonesty. Lack of reporting. Changing the narrative. All these emails. Nobody's looking at it. This connection of a young man murdered, shot in the back. Robbery gone bad. No, it's not. Last night, the investigator was telling Hannity, I didn't know this, that after they started nosing around, this investigator who was hired by the family, after he started nosing around the police, he called up the police and started asking questions. A guy from the DNC called the family and said, hey, what's going on? Who's this investigator and why the hell is he at the police station asking questions? Turns out to be that prior to Seth Rich leaving the DNC, he was having problems with a coworker. The person who made the phone call to the family was the coworker. You tell me. First of all, how does the coworker know that there was an investigator at the police department asking for information? Secondly, why hasn't anything been done about this? Who is this guy making the phone call? Why isn't the FBI going to investigate him? Why aren't we hearing more about this? And I'll tell you what's just as baffling. It's why these parents continue to deny that their son had anything to do with WikiLeaks and the drowning of information. Maybe what they're afraid of. And I understand a mourning parent is a mourning parent. But maybe what they're afraid of is the fact that their son will be tarnished as a traitor in the Democratic Party. Maybe they're afraid of the backlash that could happen Oh, my car's not here. Okay. The backlash that could happen to the rest of their family. I understand it. I understand it. And you'd be worried too if deep down you knew that your son was murdered. You'd be concerned for your other children. You'd be concerned for yourself, your wife, vice versa. It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Never seen anything like it. Anything. We are in a bad place. And so the president has to change a couple of things, with all due respect. I told the president last night in my letter to him that he has to think back about the Super Bowl. For those of you who didn't watch it, it was the greatest comeback in NFL history for Super Bowl. Tom Brady and the New England Patriots found themselves slaughtered at halftime. I know many people who turned off the television. They were actually bored because the game was so lopsided. Nobody thought they could come back. But Tom Brady is a leader. Tom Brady is going to go down pretty much as the best quarterback ever in the NFL. And I'm not a Patriots fan. By being in New York, by default, you are born hating the New England Patriots and the Boston Red Sox. So for me to say that he's better than my football hero, Joe Montana, he is. Tom Brady steps into a role to where he appears to be down and out with his team. He never gives up. He never loses faith in himself and the game plan that has always done him right. He doesn't lose faith in the people around him. And this is very important what I'm saying, because I'm going to tie this to something else that's going on in the Trump presidency right now. And it will probably be my letter to him tonight. Tom Brady comes out with confidence and says, guys, this is our game plan. Don't look at that clock. Don't listen to the crowd. Don't listen to the commentators who at halftime said we don't have a chance. It's bogus. It's fake reporting. We are the New England Patriots, and we're going to win this Super Bowl. There's a reason why we're here. We didn't get here by chance. We didn't get here by luck. We didn't get here by fooling anybody or tricking anybody. We got here because we deserve to be here. We fought hard for this. And so we're going to go out and we're going to execute. We're going to learn from the mistakes we made in the first half. We're not going to sit here with our heads down and just think about all the mistakes we made. We learned from them. We move forward. We better our game. We can still win this. There's a lot of time left on that clock. And so everybody around him believes him because he is their leader. And everybody wants somebody to look up to. And in this case, they look up to Tom Brady. And what did Tom Brady do? He didn't come up with magic plays or razzle-dazzles. He didn't come up with Statue of Liberty plays that were fake. He didn't come up with sticking the ball up somebody's shirt and running downfield. No. Blocking, tackling, passing, running. Boom, 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 boom. And by the time that clock went off, Tom Brady and his entire team were on top. Despite all the odds, despite all the naysayers, they were on top. I asked the president last night to look back on that game. And I told him that right now he's America's Tom Brady. He's down, but he's not out. His game plan for making America great again is a great game plan. And he has to trust in it. And he has to trust in the people that he surrounded himself with. Are they all perfect? No. Do some of them have to go? Sure. But I'll tell you what I don't like. I don't like the idea that my president feels, and maybe I'm as guilty as anybody else. I don't like the fact that my president feels that he needs to work at 3 times the pace of a normal person. And maybe we are all guilty of this. Maybe we are all guilty of putting so much pressure on one man to fix everything yesterday. We live in a world where everything is based on 140 characters at Twitter. We want instant updates. We don't like to wait more than 10 seconds for our Netflix movie to start. We get pissed when our phone spins a little. We have become spoiled to the nature of we want it now or it's not good. But those of us who know how to step back and clearly think understand that anything that is really worth building, anything that is going to have any real long-term substance to it, takes time. You could call it wine if you want. The best wines aren't the ones that are just made right now, they're the ones that age. President Trump knows that the greatest buildings he's built have taken years. And so he's got to allow himself to get from underneath that pressure that we have all put on top of him. Whether Democrat or Republican, whether media or the everyday person. We got to step back. And we got to say, we understand that this is going to take longer than a day. We need you to slow down, Mr. President. Because you yourself, you told Judge Janine that you're moving so quickly that Sean Spicer and the rest of your staff, they can't keep up with you. Well, I understand to a certain degree you're leading, but you can't run away. You can't leave everybody else guessing where the hell you are. And so at that point, you have to take some of the blame yourself. And you've got to realize the fact that A, there's not the amount of pressure on you. It's not realistic. Step back and you be Tom Brady and you control that clock and you go along that game plan. Is every pass going to be completed? No. But you don't need every pass to complete. You just keep with the game plan. And you let the people around you do what they're supposed to do. Eventually, this leaker will rise to the top. Eventually, they'll be caught. They always are. We rid of them and we go. You want to make a change? My suggestion is you change Reince Priebus. You take off the top, you put a new blood in there, that's it. But even if you decided to keep him, keep him. I would suggest you get your whole team in the office and you sit there and you tell them how much you care about them, how much you trust them, how much you love them, how much it is that you thought about selecting each and every last one of them, and that there's a reason why they're in your office. And that if there is one or two people in that office who are doing a disjustice to everybody else around there, and to the American people, and to this presidency, eventually you will be caught. And if you are, unfortunately, I'm going to have to come down on you harder than anything that's ever come down on you in your life. And I'm not threatening you. I'm hoping it's nobody in this room. And the president has to reinforce how much he believes in them. And then he's got to pick up the damn phone and he's got to tell Kimberly Guilfoyle at Fox News to shut her trap. To stop giving interviews about how it is that Sean Spicer is such a good guy, but yeah, she would take the job if it was given to her. Don't undermine this man. This isn't Sean Spicer's fault. Sean Spicer is a deer in headlight. And it's not fair that he's a deer in headlight. He doesn't have to be. Sean Spicer is being sent out to a gun range where everybody's got guns pointed at him and he doesn't know whether or not there's any bullets in his gun. Because he doesn't know what the hell's going on because he hasn't sat with the president every single minute before he got out there. It's where the president has to slow down. In moving so quickly, not only is he tripping his own people, but he's tripping himself. Tom Brady wouldn't do such a thing. Tom Brady knows to sit back. It's amazing. Go to YouTube. No joke. Even if you're not a football fan, watch what I say to you right now. Play itself out on that YouTube video. You look for Tom Brady Super Bowl. When he gets the ball and he goes back, He's not running and scrambling around. It's almost like he's walking. It's almost like he's going in slow motion. And that's because he's got so much confidence, and he's looking at the field, and he knows the right time to release it. It's like anybody who's ever played racquetball. Have you ever played racquetball? If you play racquetball, you know it's the person who's running all around the racket court who's going to lose. It's the person who knows how to play the bounces off the wall who wins. They barely break a sweat. The loser in a racquetball game is always the guy who's the most sweaty. This is the same thing here, Mr. President. Having Kimberly Guilfoyle talking about how it is that she may get that job and how she's interested in doing that job is shameful. It is disgusting. She is undermining everybody that's sitting there. People have worked their tail off and risked their careers for this. That's not leadership. And if you have any role in that, you need to kill that now. People want to know, and they need to know, that they're appreciated. We need the Trump team to feel invigorated, to feel like they're lit up like a Christmas tree. That's leadership. I believe you have this in you. If you don't, then I've made a great mistake. And here's another note. If for some reason Sean Spicer was to resign tomorrow, do not hire somebody from Fox News to be the press secretary. That would be an epic fail, and one that is not thought out correctly. You'll be layering on more crap. The whole narrative will be that everything that Fox News puts out is fake, and that you've hired fake news. And then it will be wondering whether or not you've ever slept with Kimberly Guilfoyle. I mean, they will not stop. I personally think that the press briefings should be toned down. That we've made calls, Sean Hannity's made calls, I've made calls, Harlan's made calls to eviscerate these things. At the same time in my monologue, if you will, when I was with Harlan, Harlan feels like you should just end it. Do daily videos. I've thought about this long and hard. I don't know. I think that might come back against us as well. I like the idea that I came up with last week. Keep Spicer, keep Huckabee, maybe even somebody else, a third person, and always send somebody else in. Keep it fresh. Keep your players fresh. Rotate them. Make the press guess. Hold them at 5 o'clock on a Friday. Don't hold them every day. There's no reason for them every day. It's the same stuff. In the event of a national emergency, yeah. Other than that, twice a week, 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. One time you get Spicer, one time you get Huckabee, one time you get Conway. You set the pace. But you can't make it so this way, A, it looks like you're running and hiding, and B, you can't make it look like it's you and Fox News against the world. It works against you. It's my 2 cents. Spend it where you will. All right. That said, I'm almost to my car. I've drained myself of all energy. Between wearing this fat man's bag and just talking nonstop, passionately, I've drained myself. So, on little other side notes, we'll be back in the studio tomorrow. Walk and talk. I don't know if Harlan's going to have it ready or not. We're having major internet problems since we changed around the studio. But we may try to do a walk and talk from the kitchen tomorrow. I think I've told you that going forward, the walk and talks are either going to be me on the phone like this, or in inclement weather, or if it's too hot or too cold, I'll be in that beautiful big kitchen, maybe cooking up some stuff, having fun, giving you news, giving you opinions, listening to what it is you have to say back. And then, we've got our 2 other shows, Harlan on the Hill and The Truth. We're getting it all ready. My daughter has created a new logo, which I love. We were going to put a whole bunch up for you to select, but I said, no, you know what? I like what you've done here. So we're going to be revealing that pretty soon. It was her idea, so I like it. If you don't like it, just tell me you do anyway. So we have that. And that's pretty much it. And DML Daily is going to have stuff all day long. You know, by the way, we put up a poll this morning. Do you think that the Clintons had something to do with Seth Rich's murder? 96% of people said yes. If you haven't taken that poll yet, make sure you go there and do that. And moving forward, we're going to have a tab at the top of our page that says polls. So this way you guys can find the polls. You're really liking them. We love that you take them. And I'm going to keep on sharing this information with President Trump in my letters. But I will be sending a letter to President Trump tonight about this whole press secretary thing. And hope you'll take a look at that, how I construct that. And of course, your feedback is always appreciated. And that's that. All right, as always, I'm going to read a couple of your messages here before I get into my hot car, which thankfully doesn't have a ticket. And then after that, I'm going to break away. All right, so let me go into the shade. It's cool in the shade. All right, so what do we have here? Let's see. We've got Rosemary Smith says polls are lame, not realistic. We all know that. All right, then guess what? Don't go. You're lame. I can't stand it when people are disrespectful like that. Don't go. Why are you even on here? Don't go. Next, Linda, Texas here. Don't care where you do this. Just thankful you were here. Thank you, Linda. Thank you. Betty says, love the walk and talk. Love the church bells. You're great, DML. Okay, I'll reveal my daughter's her logo. You know, the walk and talk, aside from the fact that I'm just out here in the streets and nature and the elements of whatever we got, rain, snow, sun, sweating, good, shed a couple LBs. One of the things that really became the signature of the walk and talk were those bells. You know, it was the clock on that on that church. And so the DML Daily really started to become meaningful. Like the name DML Daily, I had come up long before the walk and talks, but the DML Daily really started to become something. So my daughter, you know, she's taken a couple of walk and talks with me, and periodically she'll dive in and she'll watch. And she said, Dad, you know, everybody's logo, everybody has something in the logo, and I just don't think we should be doing the American flag thing like everybody else. And I couldn't agree with her more. She's like, you know, NBC's got a peacock, and CBS got this little eyeball, and I don't know what Fox News has. They got the two lamps of light that are going up. She says, I think DML Daily's logo should be circular in the shape of a clock, because it's DML Daily. You guys are 24/7, 7 days, 24/7, 365, and you had those whole bell thing, those chime things. And I think we should put the chimes somewhere in the logo somehow, or you know, when you're on, you know, we have these, because everybody's always calling, where are the bells? Where are the bells? I said, I love that idea. So she's been working on that now. We've been trying to come up with this for the last 2 days, 3 days. She showed me something before. I was like, God, what a brilliant kid. I love her. So that's where we're going with that. So yeah. All right, next. Love to how you break everything down. Listen to you every day, says Becky. Thank you, Becky. Jana says, I'm thankful for your letters to the president, especially the last one. You got it, Jana. All right. Joy says, great walk and talk. Make sure you watch your surroundings, and I will keep up the good work. Sounds good. Crystal says, DML, a name you can trust. Thank you, Crystal. John Craig says, I never liked the Patriots, but Brady is a great guy, and he will be the best quarterback ever. Yes, I agree with you, Johnny. All right, what do we got next? Two more. We got Terry. Love today's walk and talk. Don't get to watch them often. Well, that's too bad. Terry, keep in mind that once I'm done right now, we have a guy named Mark. He works for us out of he's a consultant we have. He works on the app. He works on all this stuff. He will download this from Facebook, and then he's probably watching right now. What's up, Mark? I promise I'll call today. I tell you that every day, but I don't. He downloads this, puts it up uploads it to YouTube. We put it on the website. So if you can't catch it on Facebook, you could always catch it on the website within an hour or two after we do that. All right. Who else? Blah blah blah. What we got? Michael. Michael's the DML. You are an inspiration and a real man. Always blunt to the point. Thanks, Michael. All right, I don't need this DML praise as much. Anything else you have in here? I appreciate the praise, but it's not why I stick around to read this stuff. Great ideas about the logo and the bells. Thank you, Sherry. I'll pass that on to my daughter. Can't wait for the DML network. Rhonda, you know, these things take a long time to build, and so far, we are right on track. In fact, if we do get this whole studio redone and our pilots, you know, everybody questioned me, why'd you stop? Well, those were pilots. You know, we wanted to test it, see how it works. It's what you do. You know, not everything's going to work, so we know what worked, what doesn't work. You know, so if we get these shows, these 3 shows, I told you I wanted 3 micro shows. I got them. If we get these 3 shows up by the end of May, I am right on schedule. And very proud of that. I have a lot of people working very hard on the background who don't always get to have their face shown on Walk and Talks or camera. All right, you know, there's a lot more than just DML and Harlan working on this stuff. All right, thoughts on this overseas trip? Cynthia asks. Cynthia, I think this overseas trip couldn't be happening at a better time. You know, it's like the you know, sometimes you just got to break away. You know, this is a great time for President Trump to break away. Let him go, get distracted with something else. You know, let there be a change in the narrative. Let there be some new news. They're going to try to keep this thing going, but you know, he's a smart guy. He'll be able to change the narrative, I think. Yeah. So that's what we got to do. We got to change the narrative. That doesn't mean that we want the Comey stuff and everything else to just go away. We got to address it. We got to make sure that it's, you know, completed from A to Z. But at the same time, we don't need it to consume everything. You know, let's keep those great jobs reports coming out. That's how you win this game. Jobs reports. Now, as I said last night in my letter, I'm going to end on this. Last night in my letter, I told the president, keep those. I don't know. I hope somebody's saying this to him in the White House. I don't know. I just get the sense they don't, because I never hear him repeat anything like this. But we have been adding jobs. And those jobs just aren't going to just Republicans. They're going to Democrats too. So a Democrat who didn't have a job prior to President Trump, you think Obama was helping that person, he or she, pay their bills? No. You think they were happy about their vote for Obama? No. You know, they want a job. They have to pay their bills. They have to live their lives. They don't care who's in the White House at the end of the day based on blue or red or left or right. They care about who's going to make their life better. Rightfully so. That's not a selfish thing. That's not a crazy thing. That's human life. That's being human. You know, I want to have a better life. I want more for this precious time that I'm here. I want a president who's going to help me get there. And so there are a lot of Democrats today who have a job who didn't have one 4 months ago, 5 months ago. You think they give 2 flying dingbats about James Comey's memo? No. They care about, now that they got a job, how are they going to get their health insurance premiums down? And now that they got a health insurance premium down, how are they going to get the cost of tuition down for their kid? And how are they going to wind up being able to take that vacation they always wanted to take? This is what they care about. And that's where I think sometimes President Trump is missing the calling, man. We don't get enough of that stuff. You know, his team is allowing him to get sucked into this other stuff. That's where I thought Ivanka was going to play a role. And if she's trying and everybody's trying and he ain't listening, well then there's nothing I could write to him that's going to change that. Nothing at all. All right, last one. Sherry says, I hope we have some good news today. Sherry, you have a better chance of it thunderstorming at this very moment. Today is Pile-On Day. So be prepared. You know, let the pile-on come. You should read the stories that we're putting out, even if it seems like for the 7th time in a row we've told you another Democrat's calling for impeachment. You want to be in the know. Don't ignore it. You want to read it. You want to at least see it. Be in the know. Be the smartest person in the room. Know what everybody is doing. So this way you can speak intelligently and you know what to share with people. Please, please. Of course, there'll be a good news somewhere along the way, and I'll tell one of my writers to dig for it. All right? That being said, I got to go because one of my writers, Jill, is probably sitting there being like, Dennis, where's my next article? All right, Jill. I say go find one on your own if you want to find one right now. I'm okay with it. All right? I'll check it before we launch it. All right. Jill wrote a great book about 9/11. I started reading it. I'll tell you about it in the weeks to come. I'm going to need you to support her. Real good stuff. All right? All right, anyway. My God, it's hot in this car. Hot. My goodness. Speaking of power windows, it's funny. My little girl, you put her in the Jeep, and it's got the cranks for the windows. Daddy, what's this? What do you mean, what's this? What is that? It's a crank. Get the window down. Where's the button? Unbelievable. These kids today. That's kids today. Doesn't everybody say that about the last generation? All right, that's it. All right. Love you guys back. Talk to you soon. Till tomorrow. God bless you. God bless our troops, the president, these United States. And who should we pick today as the extra little? David Curtis. May God bless him too. Talk to you later. Bye. In a meeting between Donald Trump, President Trump, and James Comey that took place back in February, Comey is alleging in this memo that nobody has seen that the president asked him to please stop probing into General Michael Flynn and his connections to Russia. I should say alleged connections, because Flynn's pretty much a nice guy. Can you, maybe you could do something about this? Maybe stop? Okay. Comey, who is known for taking notes every time he's in a meeting, every time he's involved in something that is germane to his job. He takes very copious notes, they say. That he took his own interpretation of this meeting with President Trump and he put it down on a memo. This memo is what they are basing, and when I say they, I mean every single last mainstream media outlet and every single last Democrat, and believe it or not, too many Republicans, that this memo could be the smoking gun. Now, for those of you, and I think my audience is pretty much my age and older, so it's not like I have to go back into a history lesson here, but you may recall Nixon's Watergate. The smoking gun was the tape in which responsibility, the media, the press, is supposed to be the fourth estate. It is supposed to operate for you, the American people. It is supposed to keep our elected officials accountable, but it is not supposed to hang our elected officials by means of reporting about a memo that was in part read over the phone by an unnamed source who is a Comey associate. What in heaven's name? That's something that you would imagine seeing at the grocery store when you're on the checkout line. You've got the National Enquirer that says aliens are growing inside somebody's head. You've got, fake boobs, and then you've got something like that. That is where that belongs. Not in the New York Times. And so now, what you're seeing today is this great pile-on. And I'm going to explain some of the great pile-on. And I want to thank you in advance if you are one of the people who has shared the little op-ed I wrote, underscored by the video of George Stephanopoulos this morning on Good Morning America. This memo, which nobody has seen, is being touted as the evidence to begin impeachment proceedings against President Trump. Now, I want to break this down for you in the most simplest of forms, and I apologize for those of you who already understand what this means. But for those of you who don't, here is my, as quick as I can, explanation. Beautiful day for a walk and talk. Beautiful day. Maybe the nicest day so far of the season. Gorgeous today here in New York on Long Island. Not a cloud in the sky. Temperature feels like probably about low 70s. It's a great day to be alive and talking to my friends here on Facebook Live. And as I let the audience build up, just once again, for those of you who don't understand the flow between the DML app and the Facebook Live, when I do it here on the cell phone, we have no way of putting this to the app because Facebook doesn't allow you to embed and share this thing in real time. So just keep that in mind. We are going to talk today about the Comey memo. This came out last night. This was after our conversation yesterday. We had a great walk and talk yesterday. I have you guys always email me or use the submit button on the DennisMichaelLynch.com website, which is the way you should do it, sending me messages. Yesterday I received more messages than I've had on a walk and talk in a long time. So we spoke yesterday about the allegations that were out from the Washington Post regarding what it is or what it is not that President Trump said / revealed in a meeting with Russian officials last week. Now, I'm calling today the Great Pile-On. I am calling it the Great Pile-On Day. We will look back, and today will be the day where it basically is Pile-On Trump Day. And last night is what sort of the discussions of trying to go to the FBI and conjuring up something. Why was a smoking gun? You got somebody on tape saying, hey man, we're just trying to do this. Okay, there's no tape here. This is one man's interpretation of a meeting that he had with Donald Trump. Now, keep in mind something, because I don't want to come across as completely biased, and I certainly don't want to come across as being blinded by the light. So I take my hat that says, Make America Great Again, I take it off, and I put on the hat that says, DML, Media You Can Trust. I got to look at this. I try to look at this from the standpoint of what is and what is not. Although Donald Trump, and I'm going to speak to him about him as Donald Trump the person, not President Trump. Donald Trump the person is a smart guy, but he is not the most articulate guy in the room. He comes from a place in New York. He comes from an era where talk is done differently than maybe the rest of the country. If you ever listen to Trump talk, he often repeats himself. Or he will take a sentence from, and I do the same thing. He will take a sentence, and instead of going from A to Z, he will go to A to G, skip the middle, go to the end, and then come back to the middle. Or buttered the bread, if you will, leading up to today's Great Pile-On Day. The New York Times stating that a memo written by former and disgraced FBI Director James Comey, that a memo indicates from Comey's pen, written by himself, that President Trump asked him to stop investigating General Michael Flynn. The New York Times reported this based on a memo they say exists that was read to them by a Comey associate. Who read parts of this memo to the New York Times. There used to be a time and day, and it was a long time ago, when a newspaper or a media outlet would never, and I mean never, risk their reputation based on A, unnamed sources, but B, somebody reading a letter over the phone. If you are going to put out a report, a scathing report, that in its own way can reference the possibility of obstruction of justice, you don't do that like you're putting out a weather report of what tomorrow may or may not be. You just don't do that. There is a